And now, it's time to sit back and enjoy the Two True Freaks Internet Radio Broadcast.
Attention, people of Earth. Do not resist us. All who oppose us shall be annihilated. We command the most powerful army of monsters in the universe. They are sure to defeat your Earth monsters. All those who are hearing this are now under the control of the Earth Destruction Directive.
Hello everyone and welcome to Earth Destruction Directive. I am your host as always, Mr. Luke Giaconetti. I'd like to thank everyone for downloading and listening to the show today. Hope everyone enjoyed our last episode where we took a look at, as far as I'm concerned, one of the absolute best Daikaiju films of all time, Gamera 2 Advent of Legion. We're sticking with film, but we are jumping back over to Godzilla, and we are jumping back into the Showa period. And you know that this film in the Showa line, it's Godzilla versus Megalon. And when I say we are taking a look at this, I am not speaking in a grammatically incorrect sense, because I have a guest. So please welcome to Earth Destruction Directive. You may remember him from his guest spots on Get Back to the Wrestling a couple of times, and you may remember that he is responsible for the name of at least one episode of Earth Destruction Directive. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to my friend Joe Butler. Hey Joe, how's it going?
Hey Luke. Hey everybody out there in podcast land. Thanks for having me, man.
How you doing?
I can't complain. It's been a good Saturday, and I'm back to work, as I've talked to you about a little offline. It's kind of nice being employed again. So yeah, I'm doing great.
Fantastic. Now, for those who may not remember, way back in hallowed antiquity, when I covered the first Daimajin movie, which you can go get that Arrow box set if you want to get the Daimajin movies. When I covered the first one, I watched that with Joe, and he coined the line as we were watching it that became not only the title of that episode, but also one of the unwritten rules here at Earth Destruction Directive, which is you never kill the old priestess.
Never. I mean, I don't understand why that's ever a good idea in anybody's vocabulary, especially if you're the villain. That just seems like you're asking for a curse.
Yeah. And sure enough, in Daimajin, it comes pretty much, it's like, oh yeah, that's the last 10 minutes of that movie. That's ooh.
Bad things.
So today we're taking a look, as I said, to looking at Godzilla vs. Megalon, and I had you penciled in for Godzilla vs. Megalon for quite a while. So why don't you enlighten us? What's your background with Godzilla, with giant monsters in general, or Godzilla vs. Megalon in particular?
Well, interestingly enough, I guess I would have to say, starting off with the Godzilla, the first movie I ever watched with Godzilla that I can clearly remember was Godzilla 1985. And it of course, is the U.S. version with Perry Mason. But not long after that, my family, we got the Sci-Fi Channel, so I started watching more monster movies. As a little kid, I watched, at the time, I didn't realize it was anime, but lots of giant robot stuff, cartoons, stuff like that. So swinging straight into giant monsters was a very obvious niche, and my parents kind of fed that with VHS tapes. Godzilla versus King Kong, like the pre-mentioned Godzilla 1985, Mothra. I've watched a fair bit. I've probably forgotten most of the movies I've watched, to be honest with you. But I have my favorites. Godzilla 1985 is a soft spot for me. I like War of the Gargantuas. I like, sadly, well, not really sadly, because it is my guilty pleasure, so I don't care what other people think, but Godzilla Final Wars is a personal favorite of mine because of how ridiculous that movie is.
That is, Final Wars, I think, was the first of the really, really polarizing Godzilla movies in the fandom. You were either really on board with it or really not digging it. There wasn't a whole lot of middle ground on that film.
No. That one is a 100% polarizing movie, and I understand why, but I love it because it's over the top. So yeah, for Godzilla, that's kind of things I've been used to. And I don't know if I'd go so far as to say like I'm a super fan, but I'm definitely a kaiju enthusiast. Anything giant monsters I'm on board with. I couldn't quote you like actors' names and the year a movie came out, but if there's giant monster and or robot fighting involved, I'm right there. That's all I'm saying.
Yes.
But as far as Godzilla versus Megalon, and this one you might recall, if you remember, again, back in the hallowed days of antiquity, when we were in college, I had a GameCube, and we put many an hour into Godzilla Destroy All Monsters Melee.
Mm-hmm.
And I seem to remember at the time a lot of people kind of bashing on Megalon, saying, "Oh, screw Megalon. I don't want to play Mechagodzilla. No, I want to be man. This Gigan guy's cool. Actually, I think you end up getting Gigan as the regular in the apartment. But I'm like, well, hang on. I'm gonna figure out Megalon's movesets, and I seem to remember kicking some serious butt with the drill hand bug. So I kind of became a fanboy of Megalon ever since then, and then went back and rewatched Godzilla versus Megalon. And I mean, come on, it has Jet Jaguar and Gigan, and I mean, we'll get into the movie more, but I mean, it's a fun movie. It's not the greatest movie, but it's still a fun movie.
Yeah, that's the diplomatic way to say it. It is a fun movie. You know, I recall Destroy All Monsters Melee, and you're right, because you had been like mastering Megalon. And so I went over to your apartment, and you were playing as Megalon, and you're like, and you said basically anything, man, they everyone online saying that Megalon's not a good character. It's like, I'm doing all sorts of stuff. And I'm like, well, I said, do you have Gigan? And you said yes. And I said, well, Gigan and Megalon are partners. And you're like, that's right. I think like you could see the dawning realization. So we would do the 2-on-2 with that, and it's like as Gigan and Megalon, and we're just like, nah, the space monsters are taking the day here, even though Megalon's from Earth, but he's sort of a space monster. But he's an invader nonetheless, right? So
yeah. I mean, we'll get into that, because I kind of was scratching my head a little bit when I was rewatching the movie. I was like, I forgot that connection there.
Yeah, but good stuff. Yeah, I've not played Destroy All Monsters Melee in some time. That was a fun game. I remember Gigan had the one where he would like leap in the air, then he would do like a U dive bomb with the jet cutter.
Yep. And very much in line with the movie.
Yes. So all right. So why don't we get right into it here, and let's dive right in, because there's a fair amount to cover here. So Godzilla vs. Megalon, known in the Japanese as Gojiratai Meguro, is from 1973. It was the 13th movie in the Godzilla series. It was released to Japanese theaters by Toho on March 17th, 1973. Made its way over to the U.S. 3 years later, 1976. CinemaShares released a dubbed version theatrically. Now, this was coming out, like I said, 1976. So this was, the summer of 76. So it was coming on all the hype that was coming up for Kong 76 that came out at the end of 1976. And so the poster art famously for the American release of Godzilla vs. Megalon shows Godzilla and Megalon battling on top of the World Trade Center. It is an insane poster. It is absolutely insane.
I got to look this up now.
It's classic. This was the second of 3 movies that CinemaShares released for Godzilla. Huge publicity hype machine that they built for this. They put out buttons with the monsters' faces on them, but that poster was in a lot of places. And they actually did a 4-page comic book that came out and was distributed to theaters a couple of weeks before the movie came out. The comic book is famously riddled with all sorts of errors. Like Jet Jaguar is called by the very creative name of Robot Man.
Oh, very creative.
Yeah, I mean, Dr. Wily rejected that one, I think. I call Robot Man. No, that's a little generic, I think. I don't know why my Dr. Wily sounds like Gru, but
Yeah.
And they also call Gigan Borodon in the comic as well. So not winning any Eisners, but still, hey, that was the first appearance of Godzilla in a comic book in the United States, believe it or not.
Wow.
Yeah. Movie actually did really good business in the U.S. considering how that mainly it was just the marketing budget. It didn't cost CinemaShares a lot of money to get the movie, but was not a real commercial success in Japan. In fact, it was the first Godzilla film that Toho had released that actually sold less than 1 million tickets, that was a this was part of the general depression of the economy in the early 1970s and the rise of television in Japan. So not a huge hit for Toho. Now, the crew a little bit are film directed by Jun Fukuda. Long and storied career for Toho. Started out as the assistant director on Rodan way back in 1956, but had become a director in his own right. He directed Ibra Horror of the Deep. He had directed Son of Godzilla. He directed the previous year's Godzilla vs. Gigan, and would go on to direct Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla the next year, and also The War in Space, which is a fun space opera that we've covered on the show. Shout out to Jimmy from NASA over at the Monster Island Film Vault, and but not a monster movie per se, but a really fun space opera. Jun Fukuda also credited with the screenplay. Now, the story goes that Shinichi Sekizawa, who was credited with a story, did not have time to write the whole screenplay, so just gave kind of a story outline, and then Fukuda fleshed it out. Sekizawa, of course, is the writer, air quotes up to the mic, of the basically the golden age into the 70s of Daikaiju at Toho. He wrote Varan, he wrote Mothra, King Kong vs. Godzilla, Atragon, Mothra vs. Godzilla, Dogora, Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, Invasion of Astro Monsters, Ibra Horror of the Deep, Son of Godzilla, wrote Mighty Jack, wrote Latitude Zero, All Monsters Attack, just all sorts of stuff in there. And in there also had an opportunity to write one episode of Ultraman. So, you can't talk the Showa period of Toho without Shinichi Sekizawa. The director of special effects are by Teriyoshi Nakano. Nakano, of course, was Eiji Tsuburai's assistant throughout the 1960s, but had become Toho's chief effects guy starting in 1971 with Godzilla vs. Hedorah. Unfortunately, Nakano given almost no money at all to do new effects in this film. As we will see, there is not a whole lot of new stuff. There is one really good standout bit of new stuff, but a lot of it they just didn't have a lot of the money to work with. Our producer, of course, Tomoyuki Tanaka, who produced all of the Godzilla films before he passed away, so very familiar name to Godzilla fans. Little bit here on the cast. So Goro, that's the scientist, he is played by Katsuhiko Sasaki. He was a regular at this time period for Toho, but also came back in the 90s as well, or in the 80s and 90s. So I thought this was interesting. He appeared in Evil of Dracula and Prophecies of Nostradamus, and then would later appear in Terror of Mechagodzilla. Then he came back in the Heisei period, and he was in Godzilla vs. Biollante in 89 and Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah in 91. Now, Joe, I think this one really struck me. This was really funny. And besides his face acting, he's actually done some voice acting. And
really?
Yes. And Sasaki is credited as doing the voice, the voice in the Japanese dub of the character Admiral Stentz from Godzilla 2014 and Godzilla King of the Monsters.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. That just amused the heck out of me. Admiral Stentz, for those who may not remember, he was the admiral on the aircraft carrier in the first one, and then he's the one that drops the oxygen destroyer on Godzilla in King of the Monsters.
Now I got to go back and watch that. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so his co-star, we're not quite sure on the relationship between Goro and Hiroshi, but Hiroshi is played by Yutaka Hayashi. This is actually his only monster genre credit. I checked out his IMDb. He's got a lot of TV from this era and appears mostly to be like, crime or procedural type of shows, which were popular in Japan in the 70s, but not really known as a genre guy. And now Roku, that's Goro's little brother, he's played by Hiroyuki Kawase. Now, you might remember, he was Ken in Godzilla vs. Hedorah. He was the kid from Godzilla vs. the Smog Monster.
Oh, he was the same kid?
Yes.
Or same actor same actor playing the little kid. Okay, interesting.
Yeah. The other one, this was strange. I don't know what to make of this credit. So he on IMDb, it says appears uncredited in Saru no Ganden. And Saru no Ganden, that is Army of the Apes, better known here in the U.S., especially to Misty fans, as Time of the Apes. That's the Japanese Planet of the Apes riff. that Sandy Frank brought over here to the U.S. He says he appears uncredited, so I don't know if he's just one of the kids in the school at the beginning or something. I'm not sure what to make of that. I think it would be too cool if Ken from Hedra and Roku from Megalon was also in Time of the Apes. That would just be like some kind of weird like Kurt Russell sort of situation.
He's crossing the streams, man. He's crossing the streams.
All right, now this one also really popped to me. So Antonio, that's the leader of Seatopia, wearing his toga and his little Megalon tiara. Okay, played by Robert Dunham. Now get this, Robert Dunham, a former U.S. Marine who became an expat living in Japan after he was honorably discharged from the Marine Corps after the war. Now, he not only, was in this, he appeared several times in Japanese science fiction movies because he could speak Japanese.
He very clearly was speaking
American.
English
so he
in the
appeared
movie.
in Mothra. Yes, he was. And so he was in Mothra. He's in Mothra versus Godzilla, Dogora, and the Green Slime. And he also did voice acting on dubs for Titan Studios for Son of Godzilla and Destroy All Monsters. So he could speak English and Japanese. So a lot of times on these types on films where they'd have Nick Adams, you could always see this too. They would be speaking English on set, and then they would either use their dialogue when they released it in the US or in English speaking territories, or they would dub it again, but it would still match up the words. So Dunham is actually not that's not his voice we hear in the dub. It's a different person playing him. But I just thought that was I never gave him a second thought until I was looking it up for this. I was like, that is crazy.
It's a very, very talented individual right there. That's a lot of credits he's got.
Yeah, and beyond that, he also ran a successful import-export business out of Japan for years, out of Tokyo. It's like guy got a pretty good gig for himself after the Marines.
Man, yeah. I was going to comment on sideburns because he had some amazing sideburns in this movie.
It is 1973,
Yeah, I know. I mean, it is dated. There's not really. I mean, I kept telling myself that I was watching the movies. It is in the 70s. Let it go. It's.
So, real quick, I want to talk about the monster cast because there is some interesting stuff in this. So, Godzilla is played by Shinji Takagi, and of course, this is the first time Godzilla is being played by someone other than Haru Nakajima. Godzilla vs. Gigan was Nakajima's swan song as Godzilla. This is the only time that Takagi played a monster for Toho. There's very little info on him out there. So I don't really have a whole lot. He would not come back for them in any capacity that I could find. Megalon was played by Hideo Date, and the only other credit I have for him is that he appeared as a goon in the tokusatsu show Thunder Mask, which I've never heard of.
Yeah, I got no idea what that is.
Yeah. Now, this was interesting. According to Wikizilla, Date was in the same theater troupe as Sugatoshi Kamada, who played Jet Jaguar. So they already knew each other. And Kamada went on to appear in two other tokusatsu shows that I've never heard of. Iron Man Tiger 7, which I don't know nothing about it, but it sounds cool.
That's that's like the best title I've heard in a while.
And also in this one sounds pretty good too. The Adventures of Rockbat.
Okay. Yeah, I like the first one better, but that one's not bad either.
So is it like a guy with like stone and bat powers? Is he like a bat that plays rock and roll?
Or does he have a giant bat that's made out of rock? I mean, come on. I mean, really here.
It raises more questions than it answers, frankly.
Yeah.
Now, what's interesting is that Kamada, if you have the Criterion Edition box set, the Godzilla Showa box set, he does have an interview on that box set talking about playing Jet Jaguar. Apparently, he had nothing but good memories of playing Jet Jaguar, which is wonderful. Now, Date and Kamada were also in the same theater troupe as Kenpachiro Satsuma, who plays Gigan. Now, this is Satsuma, of course. He's billed as Kengo Nakayama here, but Satsuma would play Godzilla through all the Heisei movies. So he is beloved for playing the 80s and 90s Godzilla. But he was just getting his start here. He had played Hedra in 1971, and he had also played Gigan in 72. So he came back as Gigan here. but would go on under the name under his billed as Nakayama, but billed as Satsuma. He would get a lot of fan favorite performances from the Heisei Godzilla films all through the 80s and 90s. So it's always neat that because the studio system was broken up by this point, but Toho still had a lot of the same people that they worked with. And so they would, you'd see these guys coming back time and time again. So that I always thought was neat, that he got to start playing the bad guys and then got to play the big man himself,
Yeah, that's kind of, I kind of like that aspect of it, of that whole, and that's the thing I think that's more a flagship of the past, is the studio system, where you would have a group that you would work with regularly, and they would kind of work their way up into different roles over time as they've kind of gained some seniority and experience. I thought that was kind of a cool aspect.
Yeah. All right, so that's all I've got on the crew and the cast. So unless you got anything else you want to touch on, I think we can get into the synopsis.
Well, and I could be off on this one, but earlier when you were describing the budget, I think that came into my mind was also that, didn't they have a really short timeline when it came to filming this movie? Because for some reason I felt like I read somewhere that they did not have a full schedule because they had planned to do a different movie which got scrapped last minute, and so they put this together and rushed it to try and have something to fill that gap.
Yeah, it's not not far off. The story goes that there was the picture Godzilla versus Red Moon, which was never made. It's there's a whole list of these Godzilla films that were announced that were never made. And supposedly with Godzilla vs. Red Moon being canceled, this one was pushed up. And what's really odd is that there was, in fact, it was a 6-month period that the film was in production, which is, fairly generous, but they only shot over 3 weeks because a lot of that was doing the very quick turnaround on production to get stuff made and everything else. So yes, this was shot on a very tight timetable and with a very reduced budget, which is part of the reason that, the certain creative choices are made in this film.
That, I feel that explains a few things.
The other thing I do want to mention, there's long been a rumor that this was supposed to be a solo Jet Jaguar film. But there's never been anything found to support that claim. Instead, what has been verified was that Jet Jaguar came about because Toho had a contest in 1972 for school kids to create a robot.
I heard about this story.
Yes, and the winner was for an elementary school student who made a character called Red Alone. Red Alone was the original idea the kid had, original drawing the kid had, that eventually became Jet Jaguar. And of course the kid was was like, well, it doesn't really look like my drawing.
Right. I seem to recall that there was a little bit, I don't know if it was really negative publicity, more so there was just some arguments, but again, rumor story, not really sure that it's true or not. But the kid was upset because his original design was red and white and didn't look anything like the Jet Jaguar that we got in the movie. So yeah. I thought that was a very interesting fan story, if not, or true story. Who knows? I don't have anything to corroborate that. So I thought it was very interesting.
Yes. The other thing I did want to mention is that the character of Megalon actually was had been around for a while. Back in All Monsters Attack, which we might call Godzilla's Revenge here in the U.S., Gabara. One of the options for Gabara that was kind of toyed with was as a giant mole cricket, which is similar to what Megalon is based on. And then in one of the scripts that was commissioned that was going to become Godzilla vs. Gigan, there is a version with Megalon in there teamed up with Gigan and King Ghidorah. Now that was the one. I don't know how much of this you've read, but there were multiple scripts written for that, and they were all extremely ambitious. And one of them had the 3 space monsters under the command of like a disembodied brain named Miko, and they were fighting against Godzilla and Anguirus and essentially Daimajin. It was a new character. It was going to be like a living Majin statue that Miko wanted to. They wanted to use Gigan's jet cutter to cut open his stone head so that Miko could stick his brain inside it and have a body.
That's actually kind of interesting and a little bit deeper plot than what we got in Godzilla vs. Megalon.
Yeah, well, the budget, of course, was kind of sabotaged that movie. Not to the extent of this one, but.
So to kind of go back, because I've always wondered about this, because I've wondered, but as usual, I didn't get off my butt and go do the research on it. So Megalon is he based off of a mole cricket? Because I always wondered if it was a mole cricket or a cicada.
I believe it's supposed to be a mole cricket. I mean, He looks more like a beetle with the thing on his head. I didn't think that, so he's like kind of all over the place.
Yeah, and mole crickets are weird looking bugs. Don't get me wrong. I've seen many of them growing up here in the South. And the burrowing thing kind of clicks. But when I look at the wings and I was thinking of the digging aspect with the drill arms, I'm like, maybe he's supposed to be a cicada. I don't know.
Yeah.
I always wondered that.
And, well, of course, it does also begs the question. It's like, I understand that they're, I guess they're sort of subterranean, but, why is there a, why is a bug living in the water kingdom?
So, okay. Do we want to get into that? Because I kind of want to, I got a bone to pick with that. Okay, why on Earth, like you said, is a kingdom known as freaking Seatopia choose to have a large insect as its avatar of vengeance? Why not a sea creature? Conversely, in the movie, they do take the time to spend at least 2 lines of dialogue to say that we were buried under the ocean's depths underground. I'm like, okay, so maybe they were buried underground. Then why not change your name from Seatopia to something else? Because you're no longer an underwater civilization. That was a little thing that was bugging the bejeebus out of me when I was watching this. I'm like, okay, you're Seatopia, and you choose to send your giant bug to... Okay, sure. Sounds good. Makes total sense.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm on Wikizilla here, and... So they've got some background here that it says, now this is from Wikizilla that I'm reading this. Megalon's design was inspired by a combination of several different insects with, according to the special effects director Teruyoshi Nakano, the face being based on a Japanese rhinoceros beetle, the body after a cicada, and the movements after grasshoppers despite standing upright. Originally, Nakano wanted the monster to be based on a dragonfly, and ladybugs were also briefly considered, but he ultimately settled on the Japanese rhinoceros beetle, possibly, this one's funny, to cash in on their popularity amongst children at the time.
Oh, that was a thing?
Mom, I'm going down to the store. I'm going to buy another rhinoceros beetle. Don't you spend another yen on another rhinoceros beetle, young man.
You've already killed 3 in the last month. You clearly aren't responsible enough with your yen or your rhinoceros beetles. My goodness. Okay, well, that's interesting. I kind of feel slightly vindicated about the cicada thing. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I just picture the kid running down like from Time of the Apes. I don't care.
Yeah, right. It's like these just, you could just see a group of friends after school running down to the local shop. Hey, I want my rhinoceros beetle for this week. I mean, it's like they're not comic books, kids. They're anyway.
Yes. Oh man. This movie's a little odd, you know that? I'm just putting that out there.
Like I said, it's not necessarily a great movie, but it is a fun movie. There is a very, very good distinction there.
Yes. All right. So, why don't we get into this movie that we've been talking about here for a while, and let's see what this Godzilla vs. Megalon thing shindig is all about. So, in the first part of 1971 or 1970X, if you're watching the Japanese one, and what I should say, our synopsis comes from Wikipedia, so credit to where it's due. In the first part of 1971, the most recent underground nuclear test set off near the Aleutian Islands sends shockwaves across the globe as far even as Monster Island in the South Pacific, severely damaging the island paradise and sending Rodan and Anguirus plummeting into the depths of the earth, with Godzilla narrowly escaping the fissure which his friends have tumbled into. I love that this movie starts with stock footage.
Yep.
This stock footage from Destroy All Monsters, which is why we get Rodan and Anguirus. But I have to say, from watching other films with my kids that has stock footage in it, kids love this. They love getting the other monsters, even if it's only just for a brief cameo. So like both my daughters loved the fact that, Manda was in Destroy All Monsters for like a couple of minutes,
Wow.
So I am sure they both love Manda for some, but I'm sure that they would love that Rodan and Anguirus showed up here for a matter of seconds.
They do get that split-second cameo. I mean, we'll get into it, but there's definitely plenty of stock footage for this time period in this movie.
Absolutely. I see, to me as a kid, I was a huge Rodan fan, and this was all I knew Anguirus from, because I didn't have when I first saw this movie, I had not seen Destroy All Monsters or Godzilla vs. Gigan, so this is all I knew Anguirus from at that point. So I was like, man, I wonder if he's in any other movies,
Just
he doesn't do a whole lot. For years, Seatopia, an opulent undersea civilization that resides in vast cities reminiscent of those of ancient Greece and ancient Rome, has existed in relative peace, ruled by Emperor Antonio. But nuclear tests in recent years have severely affected the cities via the earthquakes the tests produced. With the Seatopian capital badly affected by the most recent tests, the Seatopians plan to unleash their civilization's beetle-style god Megalon to destroy the surface world out of vengeance. And now, you talked about this. I've always wondered, why does an undersea kingdom have a beetle as their monster god? And what's kind of interesting, again, I think a lot of this goes back to the fact that Sekizawa just wrote a story idea. The story idea was basically, instead of the invaders coming from outer space, it's an invaders from inside the Earth or an undersea kingdom that are attacking Earth, and Godzilla has to fight them. So it was a very broad outline that was developed, and that they decided to go with a bug was always so strange. But there's a lot of strange choices of things like this in the Godzilla series, and it's like, well, why not? Maybe he was there, he could have been their monster god when they were living on the surface, I suppose.
Right. And interestingly enough, it does make some sense in the sense, or as far as placing the character in the setting, because Megalon, being a bug creature / kaiju with drill arms, is able to tunnel through the crevices created by the earthquakes and so forth, and can get to the surface very easily. All of that tracks. I'm just one of those guys who gets a little bit irritated by, why are you called Seatopia, living at the bottom of the ocean, and you have a bug god? I don't know, and it's not even like a water beetle or anything like that. I'm like, come on.
See, that's where the dragonfly would have made sense, because the dragonfly nymph is born in the water, isn't it?
Yeah. Could you imagine if like a little water, dragonfly nymph giant version had gotten up to the surface and then it molted? You could have had a whole little mini story there of this giant thing that they find. Granted, you'd be kind of doing Mothra at that point, but you know,
if you're gonna rip something off, rip off something good, right?
This is true. This is very true.
That's kind of like, I guess Megaguirus kind of fits that role, right? I mean, he starts out as the little Meganeuron, and then becomes a Meganeura, and then big old Megaguirus.
That's a very good point. That's a very obvious comparison.
It's funny. Megaguirus actually has more functional hands than Megalon does. Apropos of nothing. I'm just putting that out there into the universe.
So slight tangent, and I'm going to assume you remember this. Do you remember what was that webcomic we read? Twisted
Kaiju Theater. Yes.
And the fact that you wrote in this idea for the strip, and the guy followed through with it, which was, hey, he's got the little mini of Gigan and Megalon talking, and it's like, yeah, I used the blue tack too to use the toilet paper.
Yep. Otherwise, I got to go see the proctologist again.
Oh man, that I was almost in tears. I was laughing so hard when I actually read that. Because you told me the joke, and then to actually see it in webcomic form, I was floored. It was hilarious.
Man, that was, you talk about hallowed antiquity.
Yeah, man.
Oh my God, that was 20 years ago, for crying out loud.
I try not to count these numbers.
Oh my God. Let me tell you something. My wife and I today, we were talking about Triple H. As a husband and wife do often talk about Triple H.
That happens a lot.
And yeah, all the time, man. You know, you're not married, so you may not.
No, see, I don't understand these things, so that's what I'm trying to understand.
They talk to your brother. I'm sure your brother and your sister-in-law talk about Triple H. You know, other Attitude Era guys. You know, Kane probably, Steve Austin, The Rock. They come up a lot.
Oh, I'm sure.
But I said, you know, and I said, well, you used to like Triple H. He's like, well, yeah, he was in really good shape back then. He's like, it was only, 25 years ago that we're talking about. Oh my God. Nope.
Oh
nope.
Man.
Can't do it.
Yeah, what's that bit from Futurama? As they say, time makes fools of us all.
Why is there yogurt in this cap?
Well, I had some milk and I put it in there. And as they say. Okay, I guess we should get back on topic.
Okay, so tangents abound here on Earth Destruction Directive. So, on the surface, an inventor named Goro Ibuki, his little brother Roku, and Goro's friend Hiroshi are off on an outing near a lake when Seatopia makes itself known to the Earth by drying up the lake the trio was relaxing nearby to use it as a base of operations. So the bit that has always stuck with me ever since I was a little kid, that little dolphin paddle boat that Roku was on.
What the hell was that? That is the most absurd thing. I'm sitting there watching going, one, I don't understand how it functions because the kid's paddling and it's not really working. And then there are other scenes where they're trying to haul him in to shore from the earthquake and it's moving, but clearly the child is not paddling. I'm like, I don't understand how this works. Yeah. It's a thing made of nightmares. I'm fairly certain if you did shrooms and witnessed this, you would have an experience that you would never forget.
I'm watching this thing sober and I can't get it out of my head. I can't imagine if you were on something.
Golly, it's such a bizarre little floaty paddle boat thing. It's because he's sitting on a giant cartoon dolphin, and then the two paddles on the side are little dolphins that I guess it's supposed to mimic jumping out of the waves. As he paddles, and it just seems highly inefficient and just it's just nightmare fuel.
The other thing I like in this scene, I'm a sucker anytime we see ephemera from a different era. And so when we've got Goro and Hiroshi on the shore, he takes out of their picnic basket, they got a bottle of Coke and a bottle of Fanta. So I just really like that we get to see because this happened on an episode of Ultraman too, where there were a bunch of girls having a picnic and they brought the bottle of Coke, and it was a bottle of Coke that was styled to be sold in Japan in 1967. So here we got, either the Japanese Coke and Japanese Fanta bottles, the distinctive, shaped bottles. I just thought that was really neat, Yeah, that's cool. The other thing is, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I would also like to point out that you have mention the names of these characters more than the movie itself does in the first 15 minutes. I would like to go on record that I did not know the names of these characters. And I honestly didn't know the name of the best friend. I just referred to him as Cool Bro in my headcanon because I honestly don't remember them ever calling out his name in the entirety of the movie. No, you get Goro. Yeah. Right. And I forget the little brother, which for the record, also, it's not entirely clear up front that he's supposed to be the little brother. Yeah. So I'm like, are you his son? Are you the plucky sidekick? I'm going to go with little brother because that's the only thing I can think of that makes sense during this era for you to be living with this crazy inventor.
Yeah. There is a now you're right. I don't think Hiroshi's name is said at all in the dub. I don't think it is, to be honest with you.
Okay.
So they're operating, and I watched the dub for this because that's the one that I remember the most is the dub. I have obviously the Criterion one, but I watched the dub and it's they don't think they say his name at all. When I was a kid, none of these people had names. None of them. They were just that guy and the kid. Now there is a reading, and I don't know what you're going to think about this. There is a reading that exists of this film that posits Goro and Hiroshi as lovers and Roku still as Goro's little brother. But the reason why, it's okay for Goro and Hiroshi to be hanging out at the beach having a picnic is that they're friendly, with air quotes up to the mic.
Interesting.
Yeah, frankly, it doesn't impact the story one way or the other. It's just like, flavor text, if you will. So it's like, I could see that. I mean, I don't think that was the case in 1973 in Japan. I don't think that's what they were going for. But if you want to read it that way, I'm not going to stop you.
Yeah, I mean, if that's what you want to read for your headcanon, you can have that. I mean, I don't think it impacts the story in either way. I just, for the era and the time period, it's just one of those, like, it's two buddies. Like, I honestly looked at it as the wacky inventor whose buddy, who's much cooler than him, hangs out with them.
Yes.
Like, that's honestly what it is. I don't see it any other way. It's like, it's two buddies, you know? And I still, like I said, I can never remember what you said. It was Hiroshi, my bad. Hiroshi. I don't know his name.
Yeah. They never say it.
And like you said, the version that I'm most familiar with is the US dub version. So yeah, I'm like, I don't know who this is.
The other thing that is pretty neat about this scene, the drained lake is actually a fairly decent effect, all things considered in this.
Yeah.
So that's actually not a bad effect, considering, again, that there's very few new effects here that are really using miniatures and stuff like that. So I actually kind of like that one, and it's unique. They never did that. They never drained a lake any other time in a Godzilla movie that I'm aware of, that I can think of. So
I don't think so either. But
yeah. Usually things are coming up out of the lake.
That's also true. Yeah, that is actually a pretty cool effect. Like I said, there's some things. As much as I'm bragging on some of the stuff at the very beginning, because you got to get the story going, but that is actually a really cool scene at the very beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
Crazy dolphin paddle boat notwithstanding.
Yeah. Ridiculous boat. That's got to be a real thing. That can't be something that Toho created. That's got to be an actual product.
I mean, it was the 70s. It's more than likely.
Every now and again, you look at things and it's like, man, kids had cool stuff before I was born. And then you see stuff like that. You're like, you know what? I did all right.
I don't mind being a child of the 80s.
No. It's like, you know what? Castle Grayskull. Yeah. Terrordrome. Yeah. I did well. I did well.
I did good.
Not going to lie.
Facts.
Yeah. So, as our trio return home, they are ambushed by agents of Seatopia who are trying to steal Jet Jaguar, a humanoid robot under construction by Goro. However, the agents' first attempt is botched and they are forced to flee to safety. So, we are about 15 minutes in here, and we get one of my favorite movie plot devices. We get WPSR, plot point specific radio. As we are informed about the nuclear tests that are tearing the world apart, and then Hiroshi informs us all about the kingdom of Mu and the kingdom of Lemuria. And Mu, apparently, if you haven't seen the movie Atragon, then you're behind the times with that. But I guess that that might be my thought in some parallel universe about nuclear tests, is like, well, they're going to sink a continent just like they did back in ancient times. Although I think it's funny, the two continents he refers to are neither of which are the one that are the bad guy in this movie.
Right. Okay. So it wasn't just me who was like, wait a minute, that's a really cool reference, but then you don't actually wrap that puppy around. You don't bring it back to your starting point. I'm like, okay, that's a cool exposition that you're trying to throw out there, and then you don't use it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we get our first car chase.
Yes. I honestly was wondering if that was the reason why they cast that actor for that role, was if it was because he was just that good at stunts and driving cars. Because this is one of two car chases in this movie.
I think they knew their target audience, right? It's like, there's not a monster. Well, then maybe let's throw a car chase at them. They might be interested in that.
Yeah, and they did two, and they were actually okay car chases.
The second one a bit more ambitious than this first one, but I mean, my note is we have two car chases in 28 minutes.
Yes, we do. We absolutely do.
That's like Fast and Furious level editing right there,
Right, and this was the 70s.
Yeah.
And they went down a set of stairs in the first or the second one, so I'm kind of like, there was explosions in actually there was explosions in both of them, weren't there?
Yeah. Well, Terushi Nakano, he does love his explosions. We've that is a known thing in the Godzilla series. That Nakano, if he could blow some stuff up, he was on board with that. They end up back at the lab, and they get ambushed by the Seatopian agents. They chase them off. Then they're working on Jet Jaguar, so we get it's a situation where couldn't this be done better if it was done in a montage?
And then we got a science montage.
Science montage is my exact note.
What is that? I don't know. It's a stone that I got off of one of those guys. Oh wow, really? It matches the sand we found. What sand? I don't know. Let's study it.
It's like men tinkering with things and adjusting things and putting things together.
Wasn't there like a torch at one point? Like they broke it, then there was like a torch. He had on like a welder's mask, and then I was like, "Wow, science montage."
Yeah, I was really expecting him to like take the mask off, and he's like just toasting bread for like a tuna salad sandwich or something.
There are easier ways to make it real cheese, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. So they're working on our boy, and so later, the trio of inventors knocked unconscious by the returning Seatopian agents.
Yep.
The agents' plan is to use Jet Jaguar to guide and direct Megalon to destroy whatever city Seatopia commands. Goro and Roku are sent to be killed, while Hiroshi is taken hostage. This is look. There are some flimsy plot devices in movies in general, not just monster movies, but movies in general, where it's like, I always say my two favorite words in the English language are plot contrivance. So they need this robot that has not been built yet to guide Megalon. Because why? Yeah.
And they attempted, one of the agents being, in my opinion, Professor Snape. That's honest to God. In my notes, I have, why keep Cool Bro prisoner? Why doesn't Professor Snape tell him anything? Like, why?
Yeah.
That's literally in my notes here. And he pretty much, you had this entire exposition. They're like, hey, we're limited civilization, though we're secret and far more advanced than you are. Our supplies are limited, so we had to therefore use yours. And I'm like, yeah, but how did you know these guys were here? Like, how did you know that this guy was working on a robot that you can use to essentially, through radio signals or however, control your giant war god? I'm it's like, please explain that to me, Professor Snape. I don't understand.
And it's like, well, the answer is simple. It's just look over there, But
yeah. And of all the people to keep, why keep the guy who is why not keep the professor? Why? I mean, I could see getting rid of, the race car driver who clearly was a threat to you in your first car chase, and the little kid. But why get rid of the professor, the guy who you would, want to hang around in case you needed to fix something with the robot? Or heaven forbid, he interferes and has like an override, like a control that he could use since he's the inventor of the robot.
You're asking a lot, man. You're asking questions.
Yeah, that was my mistake. Was I was asking questions I was watching. I was like, no, just enjoy the movie. You've not watched it in years. Just watch the movie. And I couldn't stop myself.
So that is, like I said, that is a thing. Now here also we get to see, we start seeing some of Seatopia, which as they are getting ready for Meg, they're performing, the native dance to get Megalon to wake up, as you do for monster gods. You have to dance for him.
That's that is one consistent thing of all monster movies, especially from this era, is I love the fact that every monster god has to have some type of tribal dance to wake it. Like yeah. I mean, I've heard of some crazy alarm systems before, but the fact that you have to have women in crazy outfits doing some kind of native dance, I mean, if that was an option to wake me up, I guess I wouldn't say no.
And I will say this, it does also bring back an old favorite here on Earth Destruction Directive, was once again the return of Bikini Girls to the show. Always welcome.
I mean, they were wearing bikinis underneath their sheer
absolutely were wearing
shawls
bikinis.
or coats
Absolutely
or whatever.
bikini girls. Yes. I mean, and this is another thing, and this is one I admit to myself. This is on me for not going and watching the original Japanese, but they talk about Easter Island.
Yes, they
And
do.
they have the what are they called? The Maori or something like that is the name of the type of statue that is found on Easter Island. They have one of them in Seatopia.
Yep.
And later Antonio will say, contact our people on Easter Island as well. Nothing comes of that.
Nope. Nothing. So I'm sitting here in my, again, like you said, it could have been like, hey, we had this pitch, we're trying to flesh it out, but we don't want to flesh out too much because we got to hurry up and get this thing going. Because at the end of the day, everyone wants to see a giant monster fight. But it's like, you could have tried to loop that a little better because you had ideas that there's more to Seatopia than this, underground area where the king is. Or I'm assuming he's a king. I don't really know what the leader's rank
think he's
is.
technically an emperor.
Oh, emperor. And so you look at it and go, they clearly had some ideas that they just didn't flesh out, and it makes you wonder what would have happened had they fleshed it out.
Yeah. I mean, the no prize I've always assumed is that they must have established a base on Easter Island or kept an outpost on Easter Island. That's where, Professor Snape and his henchmen came from. Right?
Yeah.
That's the only thing that makes sense.
Clearly, they understand how to interact on the surface, so you would think that that's where it was.
But that's all supposition.
Yeah.
So Goro and Roku are sent to be killed. They're put in the back of a truck. They're literally put on a truck and driven out.
Yeah,
Hiroshi is taken hostage.
I find it extremely hilarious that because at first when I was watching, I didn't pay. I guess I just sort of like glazed over it. I'm like, oh, they threw him in the back of a truck, tied up. They're gonna get rid of him. No big deal. Then I realized that one of the henchmen literally hijacked these two truck drivers.
Yeah.
And these two truck drivers are randomly driving these people to their death at gunpoint. And I'm sitting there going, wait a minute. How did this happen?
I've got some notes on that. Let me tell you. I've got some notes on that. But so Megalon is finally released to the surface while Jet Jaguar is put under the control of the Seatopians used to guide Megalon to attack Tokyo, with the Japanese self-defense force failing to defeat the monster. Okay, so back in Seatopia, first off, we find out the Seatopians are anti-nuke, which I liked. As a Japanese film, there's got to be some character that's anti-nuke. So I thought that was, it's interesting because we sort of are supposed to feel bad for them because the reason why they're attacking the surface is because of the reckless way that the surface world has been using nuclear weapons.
Right.
But at the same time, they're also unleashing, a giant rhinoceros beetle. So it's like, they didn't even try to negotiate.
I mean, if you've got a giant beetle war god, why not take use of it?
I got to agree. It's like one thing you do. You paid for the option.
Right?
Why did I pay for it if I'm not going to use it? Right.
Exactly.
The other thing we get to see is on Antonio. He's got the Megalon headdress. And for years, I never saw this until someone online pointed it out. Now you can't not see it, that his tiara has a little Megalon head on it.
I got to go rewatch this again.
It's crazy. I know. But as soon as you see it, you're like, oh, my God, it's right there.
Like I can kind of see it in my head, but I didn't look close enough. Like I knew there was like a little something there, but I didn't realize it was a Megalon head.
Yes. That means that somewhere in some storage closet at Toho, there's probably that tiara.
We need a guy. We need to know a guy who knows a guy in Japan to go find this closet because, that's a prop that should be put in a museum somewhere.
It belongs in a museum. It's like a really bad version of Ocean's 11. And no, I don't just mean no, never mind. I'm not going to make that joke. So Megalon shows up at 20 minutes into the movie. I have always been a really big fan of his first appearance when he is drilling to the surface, and it's the shot of the flying model, and the Megalon flying model has its hands together.
Yes.
So it's like he's drilling, and it's very slowly rotating, and that's actually really a pretty cool effect, especially as a little kid. I loved that you got to see a really good shot of Megalon from all angles, like right up front the first time you see him.
Yeah, I think it was a really good introduction of the kaiju. Because when you really look at the suit, like you don't really notice it, but the drill arms that he has have two flat sides. So the intent is for them to come together and spin together as a drill. So I think that this is a very good introduction of the monster. And yeah, you're right. It was really good and it was very eye catching. And so you're like, oh, this is something new. This is something cool that we hadn't seen before. So I dug it.
Yeah. So you mentioned the truck drivers, and first off, these two guys, their cab, it's shot in a certain way and edited a certain way because on the back of their cab is pinup girls, some of which are not fully clothed. Cinema Shares was like, nope, can't have that.
Nope.
So that is some of the goofy editing involving the truck drivers is due to that.
That's funny.
The other thing is, I did a little calculation, a little back of the envelope type of calculation here.
Highly technical.
Highly technical. And he says that they're being paid 100,000 yen. Okay? 100,000 yen roughly translates to about $930. Okay? According to xe.com. Oh, excuse me. It's $910. Okay? So $910 in 2010 dollars. Okay? So I then went and found an inflation calculator and ran $910, what the equivalent would be? $5,500, almost $5,600.
Wow.
Is what they're effectively being paid. So they're getting paid about $6,000. No questions asked, just drive this thing where it goes. Like $6,000, that's $3,000 a piece for just driving something. What are the chances that there's a guy and his little brother in the back?
I mean, I can kind of see why they would do it if they did not know. Now, granted, when the gun came out, I'm pretty sure that's when they were like, what are we doing? Yeah. But up until that point, I can kind of see it's like, dude, this is a cool $3,000 to hit. Man, that's pretty slick. Can't really argue with that.
So
I mean, you could argue with that, but
I mean, again, it's like when you go to the drive-thru and they give you free food. It's like, just take it. Don't ask no questions. Just take it. It's like, what? Wait a minute. What?
Are you thinking back on a fishing trip we had when we were getting free Frosties and Wendy's, and one buddy walks in and goes, "Why?" It's like, dude, it's free. Who cares? Just get the freaking Frosty. Appreciate that little reference.
Free Frosties. Why?
It's like, who cares? It's free.
A free Frosty. Oh man, now I want to go to Wendy's, but
I go to Wendy's too much. That's part of my overall I need to lose weight thing is stop going to Wendy's.
Stop going to Wendy's. That's the first step. That's the first thing. They say you can't exercise your way out of a bad diet.
No, you cannot. You cannot, and because I have failed in the last month. So it's like, yep, nope. You got it. You can't do it.
Yep. So we get the initial. Well, first off, actually, we get before we get the SDF sequence, we get Hiroshi escaping, and we get car chase number 2.
Yes.
And this car chase, again, all things considered, this is pretty impressive considering the time and budget that they had here. Because, like you said, there's off-roading. They drive down a flight of steps. There's jumps. There's like a cement pour at one point.
Yeah, there was on a random motorcycle rider that came out of nowhere. I'm kind of like, well, how many henchmen does Snape have? Because he only had the one dude, and the one dude's in the truck.
Yes.
So it was a really good. Yeah, again for the time, it was actually a pretty good car scene. And like you said, we're only 20 some minutes into the movie, and we've gotten 2 car chases.
Yes. You just in your mind, at least I always did, when the guy goes to stand up and the cement pours on his head, it's like, nuts, I'm reminded of when Godzilla's Megalon was, of course, featured in Mystery Science Theater 3000. The line that Joe was like, well, better luck next time, Goopy, God. So Megalon is being, we get the initial scenes of the JSDF This is all stock footage.
Yes,
this
it
stuff.
is.
This is stock footage from last year. A lot of this, because there is several shots of here that is recycled from Godzilla vs. Gigan.
Also, some of those scenes with the Defense Force organizing and mobilizing can also be seen in War of the Gargantuas.
That's right. Yes. I think it's because of the use of the maser tanks. The bit with, I'm not sure if it's in this scene or later on, where actually it happens later on. It happens after the dam scene when we see the maser tanks attacking Megalon and he runs behind the trees.
Yeah. That
was used the year before in Godzilla vs. Gigan and was recycled completely from War of the Gargantuas. So
yeah. They're funny enough, they're all linked because of all three of those movies share that stock footage in common.
Yeah. But, the thing is that, I mean, it was a sign of the times. There's a lot of stock footage in these movies, this one and the previous one, because of the budgets, and, they do the best with it as they can.
Yeah. And if you cut it, I mean, keep going.
I was going to say, we have the ability to go back and look at them and watch them on either video or on DVD or Blu-ray and say, oh, well, that was from this. If you were a kid, you might not have even seen the previous film. And if you did, you probably only saw it the one time. You probably don't remember exactly, those scenes. So it's not, considering the audience, I can understand why Toho was doing that, given the constraints that they were under.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it makes sense. And as a studio, you want to take that opportunity when you can. And if you cut it right, it'll work. Coincidentally, the evacuation scenes when Megalon shows up and starts marching its way to Tokyo, as they're evacuating all the civilians, also the same evacuation scene in, I think it was Gigan. I think it was Godzilla versus Gigan. Same evacuation scene was used.
Yes, which I think is recycled actually from Ghidorah, if I remember correctly. I believe it's recycled from either Ghidorah or Monster Zero, I think. I'm not 100% sure on that. But yeah, there's a lot of it. I mean, it's the same reason why Megalon has a beam that he fires from his horn that looks exactly like King Ghidorah's beam.
I was wondering that, but I didn't really put two and two together. I was thinking that might have been the case, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah, no, that's why he only uses it like in one shot in the actual fight. He mostly just uses it fighting against, things that King Ghidorah had previously destroyed.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Yeah.
We've had their second car chase.
Second car chase. So this is a bit, the synopsis falls down the job here. So I'll read it, but then we'll expand out. Eventually, the trio of heroes manage to escape their situation with the Seatopians and reunite to devise a plan to send Jet Jaguar to get Godzilla's help using Jet Jaguar's secondary control system. After uniting with the JSDF, Goro manages to regain control of Jet Jaguar and sends the robot monster to bring Godzilla to fight Megalon. Without a guide to control its actions, Megalon flails around relentlessly and aimlessly, fighting with the self-defense force and destroying the outskirts of Tokyo. So, this glosses over the best scene in the movie, which is Megalon destroying the dam, with the truck parked at the dam where they're going to drop the container off and kill Goro and Roku, and the two truck drivers get the hell out of there. And this is the scene that basically all of the money for the new effects really went into this one scene of Megalon destroying the dam, crashing through it, the rubble, the flooding, the container box flying, all of that, that's the thing.
It's a really good scene. The model work that was done to get the truck to match all the rubble as it was breaking through. Some of the shots were kind of quick and cut. I could have sworn one, it made me laugh because it looked like Megalon was like riding down like a water slide, like when the dam broke and he crashed through the rubble in the water. I just, for some reason in my head, had this vision of Megalon sliding down a water slide.
Like, whee!
Basically, because I'm like, why did you break down the dam other than just to be like, wee?
It's one of the things like, oh man, I'm never going to get another chance to do this.
Right, and then he freaking field goal punts the truck, or no, he volleyball spikes the truck.
And
I'm like,
if you're like me, you're thinking, oh, good, they're dead because they just got hit with that thing by the monster. It's like, oh, damn it, they're alive.
yeah, I mean that thing crashes, and coincidentally, because the buddy, and again, this is the thing that I couldn't understand. He successfully escapes Professor Snape, goes on his awesome second car chase. How does he know where to go?
Mm.
Like,
He doesn't. He finds them by accident.
He finds them by accident. He looks at he doesn't know that they were put in this truck in particular. He just goes to the truck, and the drivers get out, and they're like, "The monster's here. We got to get away. Drive us away." He's like, "No, I got to get my friend." I'm like, how do you know that your friends are in that truck?
Yeah. There's a lot of TV style coincidences in this script, things that kind of have to happen because they need to happen, because otherwise we don't have a story.
Right. So again, it helps progress to what we need, which is, he goes, he picks up Goro and his little brother. They themselves then go, hey, I can use my secondary control to stop Jet Jaguar. And then he goes, oh, he's too far away. He's out of line of sight. Let's go get the self-defense force and get him to help us. And I'm like, okay, we're moving the story along here. And then it's like, and then like you mentioned, they get the brilliant idea of, let's get Godzilla to help. I'm like, wait, I know that this was the time period where Godzilla becomes sort of the anti-hero to help defend Japan, but I still don't understand how that transition happened. And it just seems like such a giant leap of logic of, let's use our robot to go get Godzilla to help fight this monster.
I mean, when you say it like that, it just sounds ridiculous.
It's like, this may sound over the top, but maybe we can ask the fairies for help. It's completely unscientific, but
yeah, it's like maybe that's what we'd be doing. That's what they expect us to do.
Right.
So
right.
we get the sequence here, like I said, with the recycled shot from War of the Gargantuas and Godzilla vs. Gigan. So Maser tanks. Check off that box on your scorecard if you are a fan of Maser tanks, and really, who isn't?
I mean, who isn't? How can you watch this genre and not like Maser tanks?
Yes. We also get Megalon hopping around because he doesn't have. And this is funny because this goes away when Jet Jaguar comes back, and he's still when Jet Jaguar's on his own. Megalon just learns how to walk again. Apparently, he's just hopping around like a jackrabbit, or I guess a grasshopper.
Yeah.
But again, it's like, okay, he's wild and uncontrollable, but like I don't see why he suddenly stops when it's time for the big fight.
See, I always thought the weird hopping was because the suit was so heavy they just couldn't do like the line work to lift the suit, and so it had that weird looking hop. But I didn't realize that the concept was that no, the legs are supposed to be like a grasshopper.
Yeah, I could see that. I'm just, it's always odd. It's like I understand. Okay, without Jet Jaguar there, he's kind of wild. But how they're able to, but he's able to like, I guess because he wants to fight. He's able to like, oh, cool, we can fight now.
Yeah. I guess.
Yeah. You know what? If somebody didn't think about it, I'm not going to spend too much time thinking about it. So Jet Jaguar flies to Monster Island. I love that they call it, in fact, Monster Island.
Even though I've heard it might be a peninsula, but
Yeah. Monster Peninsula doesn't work. You need an island so they can't get off.
Right.
You can't have them just, oh, well, they're surrounded on water on three sides, sir. It's like, well, where are we? We're on the other side that's not surrounded by water, sir. It's like, Corporal, you and I need to have a discussion about it.
Yeah, and well, the deep cut reference that I was making was, I don't know if you remember that episode of The Simpsons.
Yes.
Okay, you do remember. Okay.
Yes, yeah. They sentenced Lisa to exile on Monster Island. You go, don't worry, it's just a name.
Yep. It's like, I thought they said it was just a name. It's like, it's actually a peninsula.
But they mean it's actually a peninsula. I always thought that joke would have worked too if they had said it's actually an archipelago.
That would actually be funnier. I don't know why. There's just something more hilarious about the word archipelago. I don't know why. I think it's because of the syllables.
It's such a like a fancy word for just, it's a group of islands,
Right.
It's like a maitre d' at a buffet type of situation,
Maybe it came off as too pretentious in the translation. That's why they didn't want to do archipelagos. Like, no, we want just one island for all the monsters. We don't want a series of. But I mean, if you think about a series of islands, would make more sense because then each giant monster would kind of like have its own territory, and then it would. Yeah. It actually kind of makes a little bit of sense if it was an archipelago.
Well,
now I'm thinking about ecosystems a little too much for kaiju.
You got to watch Destroy All Monsters. They go into whole detail of like how they keep them on the island and keep them fed and all that.
That's right, they do.
You know, and that's I said that on the Destroy All Monsters episode. It's like, you know, as I've gotten older, I've grown to really love the end of that movie where all the monsters are living in peace on an island and humans aren't attacking them. And it's like, well, look at that. They got a happy ending, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe I'm just a romantic in my old age.
You're. It's like I just want all giant monsters to live with coexistence on their own island. Damn it!
Yeah.
That's all I want in life.
You know, it's at some point, you know, we'll be there. You know, keep reaching for that dream. But
exactly.
So Jet Jaguar flies to Monster Island. He talks to Godzilla apparently with like Monster Universal Sign Language.
So okay, I have to ask a quick thing. So Jet Jaguar shows up, but right before he shows up, it cuts to a scene of Godzilla. And is it just me? But is it almost looks like Godzilla is clutching an imaginary set of pearls, wondering what happened to Anguirus and Rodan. And then when Jet Jaguar shows up, it's like he answered the phone and is finally getting the news as to what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
Like the pantomime. I know I'm going very specific here in my pantomime description, but it just really seemed kind of odd, and it could just be the way the eyes are on the suit. But it's like, oh no, we just had a horrible earthquake that rocked our monster island. Whatever will we? I mean, honestly, the hands were together. Yeah. It looked like imaginary pearls were being clutched, and I'm like, you're freaking Godzilla. What are you doing? And then Jet Jaguar shows up, and they start having a conversation in some weird robot sign language, and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, let's go throw down. Sounds good. I understand. And I'm like, that's Big G for you.
Yeah. Got to do it, man.
Got to do it. And that was the other thing I thought was really funny. It's like, you know, this is hands down the greatest invention ever on the planet. Because Jet Jaguar can automatically adjust his programming to do what is necessary.
Yes.
Which includes talking to Godzilla.
Yeah. There is, again, this I guess was, you know, it's just science. That's all there is to it, you know.
I mean, for science, man. I
mean, they had a montage and everything.
They did.
So Godzilla spends his long time swimming to Japan, which he did in the last movie too. He also took a while swimming to Japan. He didn't talk in this one though.
No.
Then we go back to Megalon in Tokyo. A lot of stock footage of King Ghidorah here, using his King Ghidorah's gravity beams, which is Megalon's horn beam. We also see the first appearance of Megalon's napalm bombs, which he spits out of his mouth,
which are really cool.
I dig that. That is a unique thing. The like the napalm grenade sort of weapon. I don't think nobody else had really done anything like that previously, and we get some good stuff with it in the actual fight. So it's a welcome addition. Yeah, no, I actually really like that. It does make it unique to that particular monster. Yeah. But again, it's mostly stock footage here other than Gigan himself. The one interesting bit is we do get a scene of Megalon being attacked by a fleet of jets. This is taken from the previous film, and if you're watching moderately carefully, in the close-up shots, you can see it's actually Gigan who is hitting the planes out of the air because they are Gigan's hook hands, his hammer fists, I think they're called in Japan, not Megalon's drill bits. So it's like why didn't you save this scene and do it later after Gigan shows up? Yeah. No, couldn't pull it off. Yeah. But again, I never noticed as a kid, so. I mean, I didn't notice it as an adult when I watched it the first time, so, you know, I really can't, can't say anything. Yeah. So Seatopians learn of Jet Jaguar's turn and thus send out a distress call to their allies, to Space Hunter Nebula M aliens from the previous film, to send the alien monster Gigan to assist their allies. Let's talk about this for a second. Sure. Antonio simply says, contact Star Hunter Universe M. Tell them we need Gigan. We've had no no reason to suspect that they've had contact with. They won't get in touch with the surface world, but they're in contact with other planets in another nebula, in like another universe.
I don't get it. Like, no, that one was that one hurt me. Like that one, I heard it. I stopped I rewound it, played it over again. I'm like, no, he said that. He really did say that. How I get they're supposed to be an advanced civilization, even though they had to, steal a robot from somebody else to enact their plan. But, how is it they can talk to space cockroaches from another freaking universe?
Yeah.
And when did they have this treaty in place to be like, hey, yo, when we summon our giant war god, can you send yours in case we need backup?
And why were they not involved in last year's plan?
Right.
Right.
Because
yeah.
Well, I was going to say, that kind of leads back to what you were saying earlier about, the script and the original premise of having Megalon with Gigan kind of as lieutenants to Ghidorah. It kind of, it leads some credence to that, hey, again, if we're pitching this story, but it hasn't been fully fleshed out, there'd be little discrepancies like this as to why does Seatopia know them?
The only way I can no prize this is that somehow when the Nebula aliens were on Earth in the last movie, because they were there for a while in that movie, where they're using the bodies that are recently dead and all that somehow the Seatopian agents got in touch with them and said, look, here's the deal. We are willing to let you guys live on the surface, and we will continue to live in peace underwater, in our subterranean kingdom. And we can share the Earth. We don't care if you ravage the surface of the Earth and make it unlivable because we don't like the surface dwellers either. We'll stay down here if you guys stay up there. That's about the only way I can no prize that, is that at some point they must have gotten in touch and said, hey, here's the deal. But, maybe because in Gigan, the timetable, the invasion gets thrown off, so they couldn't get Megalon involved with it or something. I don't know. But again, this is all very, fanish, try and make the pieces fit after the fact.
Yes. And it's very, you look at it and go, that seems like a very good Deus Ex Machina you guys just yanked in here to have more awesome action in the fighting scenes with the monsters. And it's like, I'm not going to say no, I don't want Gigan here, but I just don't get why.
Yeah.
So that's a hell of a leap of logic you guys just made. To be like, hey, call up the guys we know. Like, but they're in another planet on another universe or different nebula, sir. But they're our friends. Call them. We need Gigan.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. You got it.
It's like, Chairman, what is up? It's Antonio, man.
Oh man. Yeah. No, that was bizarre. That was bizarre. I had that little note too. I'm glad we decided to stop for a second because that's for those of you who may be watching this and listening at home, you're gonna be going, what the hell, man? What's going on in this movie?
Yeah.
Again, fun movie.
Yeah, it's the strange bedfellows situation, right? One that you and I have talked about many times. One of our favorite bits of, like little character bits from like the late 90s, 2000s of DC Comics was that Atom Smasher and Black Adam were friends.
Yeah.
You know? So Megalon and Gigan are friends. That's all.
Right. I have
sometimes people from different walks of life end up hanging out and, they hit it off.
Right. I actually have a slightly different analogy, but I'm going to save that until we get to the actual fight scenes with all the big monsters. So,
Okay.
But I have an analogy that I think you will greatly appreciate.
Okay, I'll put a pin in that now. There we go. So, as Godzilla journeys to fight Megalon, Jet Jaguar starts acting on its own and ignoring commands to the surprise of its inventors, and grows to gigantic proportions to face Megalon himself. The battle is roughly at a standstill between Robot and Giant Bug until Gigan arrives, and both Megalon and Gigan double team against Jet Jaguar. Okay. You were talking about Jet Jaguar being the greatest invention of all time. Okay, so Goro says at one point he's programmed himself for survival. And that's why he's ignoring their commands. I don't believe that's how artificial intelligence works.
I'm glad you said that. So when I saw that, the first thing that popped in my head is, then why isn't he running away? Like, if you were to take artificial intelligence logics and just look at this for a second, go, okay, I am here to survive and make sure that I maintain my state. Then in order to do so, that means I shouldn't go fight the giant monster. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to defy the laws of physics and gain mass and grow to giant size to fight the monster. Okay. That's how I will survive.
Yeah. Remember we asked about that, that it raises more questions than it answers? Again, I've said this many times. If you can have a movie where you have a robot who programs himself to grow giant, and it's not the craziest thing in your movie, then you're probably watching a good Daikaiju movie right there.
I mean, hands down. Hands down.
Yeah.
If that is not the craziest thing in your movie, you're doing all right. Doing all right.
So on the human portion of the story, the synopsis, they get back. So we follow Hiroshi and Roku. They break into, well, they don't break into, they kind of break into a model shop, right? And they're getting a model plane because they're famously going to smash it into the face of one of the Seatopian goons when they take back the lab. This one stood out to me just because it's like, man, I would love to go to that model shop.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that is the coolest thing. Like, because it was almost like a street stall. Like, they just rode up on the motorcycle and they just walk in, and it's like all of these models. I'm going, dude, we don't have that here. Or at least I've not had an opportunity to go to a shop like that, at least not in a very long time. This is cool. They're just planes of all sizes, different model kits of various military models and stuff like that. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the jet they picked up looks an awful lot like the jets used in the said stock footage.
Yes, I believe they are. I don't have it, but yes, I believe it is. Which was the jet in use by the JSDF at that time.
Mm-hmm. But it put a smile on my face as a nerd and wargamer and all fan of many things model and being an Air Force brat. I was like, man, this is a cool shop.
Yeah, and like I said, in 1973, that was probably just a model shop, probably down the road from Toho.
Right.
Okay, and by the way, just to close the loop on that, I know you're an Air Force brat, a fighter jet type guy. That's the F-86 Sabre jet.
See, I was actually going to go look that up after this, but thanks. I appreciate that.
I will say this. Wikizilla is great because they list all the different weapons and vehicles and stuff that appear in things because Daikaiju,
I mean, you got to be thorough with your fandom.
I love, like, for instance, we know that there was both the Type 66 Maser Cannon and the Type 70 Maser Cannon, which are two totally different things. Please. It's like, bro, do you even Godzilla? As an aside, I was refereeing a soccer match today, and one of the players actually yelled out to another player, "Bro, I'm open." Nice. And I instinctually, blurted out what I always say whenever I hear two young boys call each other bro. I was like, "I'm not your bro, dude."
Oh, fantastic! And what response did you get?
They were, to be fair, I don't. They just kept on playing. They don't really, they barely listen to the whistle, let alone an instruction from the referee. So
that's good. That's good. Yeah. At least they're focused, sort of.
Yeah. He really cares about what I have no idea. But so Jet Jaguar, 54 minutes into this movie, Jet Jaguar has grown giant and now is fighting Megalon. This is an interesting fight because Jet Jaguar fights kind of like Ultraman, right? Kind of fights bit. like a Hyodai hero with martial arts and stuff. We get to see a couple of really fun bits from Megalon. He uses the drill bits where he's drilling up from underground, which is nice. And Jet Jaguar grabs him and pulls him up, which I always thought was cool. Then Jet Jaguar is spinning around because Megalon is flying around him so fast that he's spinning around. He's clearly standing on a turntable.
Yes, or at least at the beginning of that sequence, he's clearly standing on a turntable.
Yeah.
And then at the end of it, and the thing is, I myself was getting dizzy watching this scene, and I'm sitting there going, "You're a robot. Do you have equilibrium? Like is that a thing?"
I that is my note. How does a robot get dizzy?
He's not used to all that mass he just grew into, so he's you know, some growing pains. He's not quite got a good feel for the body. You know, it happens, man. You know, it's like, you know.
He had a big drop off in fuel pressure. It's like, whoa, man, I am feeling it in my head right now.
Yeah. But you're right. Very clearly on a turntable, just spinning, and then when they get and the sequence goes on for a little bit. Like it's not short for him spinning, and I'm like, oh, you guys really spent this much time recording this footage? Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, they had it set up. They might as well get some footage out of it.
This is true, and I guess I'm sure they could have just recorded a lot of it and cut it to however much they needed. And then they had the actor fall and so I'm like, oh look, he's off the turntable now.
I will say this, that is a really good bit of physical acting of him getting dizzy and falling over, even if it doesn't make sense.
This is true. I mean, it works. It clearly was like, oh man, Jet Jaguar is dizzy and he fell over, and then you stop and you're like, Jet Jaguar is a robot.
It's one of those fridge moments, right? When you're after the movie, when you're getting a snack in the fridge, like, wait a minute.
Like, hang on a second. But this whole part, though, like I said, is like 54 minutes into the movie, and we finally get to see some serious, giant monster action going on. It's actually a pretty fun little scene between the two of them, and so I'm going to start to toss in my analogy, and it makes more sense as the other players unfold. But you and I are fans of wrestling, and I can't help but not think that this is the babyface versus the heel and Jet Jaguar versus Megalon, it's the new heel versus the new babyface in this fight.
Absolutely.
And then Gigan comes in, who's obviously another heel who's partnered with just randomly just heel and heel. It's like, oh yeah, you guys should be a team. And so they're gonna go wail on the babyface. Right.
Well, in the 70s and 80s, heels all got along with each other generally.
So, and it works. Yeah. I mean, it really worked. Like, all the analogies works. And then, later when Godzilla shows up, and we'll get into that. I don't want to jump too far ahead, but when Godzilla shows up, it's like the wily veteran who's been around for a hot minute kind of come in to take the babyface under his wing. Not necessarily a good guy, not necessarily a bad guy. He could have been a heel sometimes, turned babyface, but he's there with the experience to kind of help the babyface along in this very clearly unfair 2-on-1 fight.
Yeah. Well, he's also there to give the new babyface that's up on the rise, give him a rub.
Yeah.
Right? Because now he's like, whoa, he's teaming with the champ right now, It's like that puts a rub on Jet Jaguar that he gets to team with Big G right out of the gate.
Exactly.
They must think a lot of him,
Exactly. You got a champ who goes over with no matter what crowd you're looking at. And, it's like, hey, look at Jet Jaguar hanging out with the champ.
Yeah. I mean, it's and to keep it going, you got the guy that he main evented with last year is coming in as the heel, and then the new monster heel that nobody can stop. It's like this is a SummerSlam right here, which is appropriate as we're recording this in August, So,
dude, the new pay-per-view in Tokyo right here.
Yeah. It's like live at the Tokyo Dome.
And the thing is, what really sells this moment, though, has to be Godzilla doing not one, but 2 running drop kicks.
Oh. There's an account on Twitter called One Perfect Shot that simply shows perfect shots from movies. If I ran it, it would just be this every day. It would just be Godzilla flying through the air, the flying drop kick every single day. It's like you can come close with your cinematography and your direction, or you can just do this because, I'm sorry, there is simply no way that you can top this. I mean, Nakano and Fukuda, they got together on this one, and it's perfect. I'm sorry.
Absolutely, it's fantastic. And the really great part is if you actually look at the timestamps as far as the monster fight goes, it almost is like it is almost what you would expect from a main event. It's like 20 minutes or TV time remaining is the length of the match, and it's pretty close to that.
Yeah. I mean, even getting into some of the weird details here. I mean, Godzilla shows up, and you know what? And you know what? I'm not going to worry about the rest of the synopsis, because the rest of the synopsis is Godzilla shows up, they fight, the bad guys run away, and they shake hands, and Jet Jaguar shrinks down to normal size and returns home. So that's the end of our story. So we got 20 minutes of fight to talk about here.
Yeah. Yes,
so Godzilla
we do.
shows up, and he immediately hits Megalon with a tree.
Yes.
Right. So this has got to be, again, the top babyface coming in. You know, this is like a Mid-South or a, championship wrestling from Florida situation where the young babyface is getting worked over by the two heels. He comes in with the chair to clean house.
Yep.
Right. And
it's so good too. It's so appropriate, because at one point I think he's down and Gigan like emotions to Megalon, and they literally just start kicking Jet Jaguar back and forth while he's down.
Yes.
And I'm like, this is like, I'm watching this and going, I'm pretty sure I saw this on AEW the other night. I might have been on Elevation. I'm not sure.
Yeah, one of them. I mean, Gigan and Megalon also speak in monster sign language. Their sign language is a little more basic. It's like, hey, let's beat this guy up. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I would like to think the two of them have a shared language of having metal appendages. So, I mean, clearly they're fluent in each other's own sign language.
Yep. Oh, man. We get the... so the fight is just back and forth. We get the napalm bomb that Jet Jaguar dives on it and throws it away like we're suddenly in a World War II movie.
Oh, that was cool. So again, like you mentioned earlier, the napalm bomb is kind of really unique for Megalon. So you have that scene where Godzilla's down, and Jet Jaguar comes in for the save, grabs it, tosses away, and I think it actually throws it back in Megalon's face, and it blows up and knocks Megalon down.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, because even later in the fight, Megalon does the trick again, and Godzilla hammers it back in his face, and I think it blows up in Megalon's mouth.
Yeah. He's like, oh, dude, what?
That's a spicy meatball right there. So then, they square off a little bit, like you were saying. So, I mean, literally, we have 20 minutes of just pure monster fighting. It's fantastic. Yeah. And so Jet Jaguar and Megalon square off for a little while. Godzilla versus Gigan. So it's like a rematch, like I said, from the previous year's pay-per-view event. And
yes.
They do use some stock footage, because the whole scene fight in scene in Godzilla versus Gigan, where Gigan swoops down out of the air, cuts G's shoulder. I'm like, okay, I recognize that scene. Well, but it's a good scene. It works for the fight.
I mean, that is one of the best interactions that they have in Godzilla vs. Gigan, so bringing it back made sense, and I've always liked that, and it plays really well here too, because it's well done.
Yeah,
and it was so rare really to see Godzilla bleed, because that was, he bled a little bit, like he got kind of maimed in Hedra, but having like actual blood spurt out of him, that's memorable.
Yes. So
the other one that I like, besides that, it comes after that, where it's a new thing where it's like a high-low, where Gigan is coming in with the jet cutter on Godzilla while Megalon drills up out of the ground.
Yeah.
That is, again, that's just well put together and directed from that, where it's like everybody, it's like you could see the heroes are kind of looking around because they don't know where they are, and then the villains attack both at the same time. I thought that was that was another one that's always stuck with me.
Yeah, that was actually really well choreographed in that little fight. And then was it after that, at that point, that I think Megalon and Gigan were basically sealing off the two of them inside the ring of fire, and then Jet Jaguar like motions to Godzilla, who wraps his arms around him, and he jumps and like rockets out of the fire and behind Gigan and Megalon, and the two of them turn around like, the hell, he can do that? I mean, literally, That's what I thought the thought bubble was. Is like, he can do that?
Yeah, that's the look on their faces, even though they don't have any way to emote, but the actor's like, wait, what?
Yeah, and I can't help but think that Gigan's like, you didn't tell me he could do that.
Yeah. The other one, there's another bit, and right before they start doing the Ring of Fire, right as Megalon is starting to shoot and create all the explosions, they've got Jet Jaguar, and they throw him down, and Godzilla fires at Megalon, and Megalon just starts blasting with the napalm bombs and stuff. And it's in that scene, then Gigan flies straight up out of the shot, which is pretty neat because he is basically getting out of dodge because we all know Gigan's kind of a coward. You know.
Yep.
So I just like the interaction there where you've got one actor standing and the other one is rigged and they're right next to each other so that one can fly right out of the shot. Is a well done. But yeah, the Ring of Fire sequence that's another one. It's very memorable because again, Teruyushi Nakano loved doing fire and explosions. He does them so well in all of his movies. There's so many great explosions in his stuff. So this big, I mean, admittedly, they're fighting just in a big empty field. So there's no buildings, there's no miniatures, but that's a lot of fire.
Yes,
and it's very impressive because you got to again think of the scale. It's like, okay, those are some big flames it's like there's a wildfire going on around them right now.
Yeah, basically it looks like California. So, it's this massive just blaze going because you have these two giant monsters stuck inside this ring being fire caused by another two giant monsters. Pretty slick. Like I said, the effects were fantastic in this fight scene. And, as much as we ragged on the plot and the story up until this point, when we get to 54 minutes into the movie and the monsters start to go at it, this is where it is just pure fun at this point. And then and some very iconic scenes, like Gigan cutting Godzilla, like this Ring of Fire, Megalon and Jet Jaguar at the start of it. There's a lot of really good, memorable shots in this confrontation. So, one of the reasons why this is one of my favorite movies is that, you can remember some of the fight scene fairly clearly.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's not super ambitious, and it's not, it's not even where it's set and all that is not super ambitious. And, but they did that before. Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, the final fight takes place on Mount Fuji, and it's just, a mountain. Yes, there's lots of destruction earlier in the film. But same with Monster Zero. The two fights in Monster Zero, one takes place on Planet X and one takes place on Mount Fuji. So it's not unheard of to do this.
Right.
And, but again, the limitations show, but there's still quality. Nakano put together a good series of shots to make this fight sequence. And that's the bread and butter here. It's a movie aimed at kids. So for the young and for viewers like us who are young at heart while watching this, it hits the mark.
Yep.
So the fight continues on. After the heroes escape from the Ring of Fire, that's when they take the advantage. There's a great bit. Jet Jaguar grabs Gigan, breaks his arm, and then Gorilla presses him over his head.
Yep.
Going full Ultimate Warrior here, then throws him up. Godzilla hits him with the atomic breath, and Gigan says, "I have had enough of you," and flies away like a coward, like he always does.
Oh yeah, he punks out. And that's if I made a note that was at the 1 hour and 12-minute mark. So he just punks out, like gone, just gone. He's like, I'm done, not paid enough. I've done my job. I'm out. I am out.
Yeah. You just hear in the distance, bye.
And the best worst part is that you cut back to Megalon, whose name is in the title of this movie, who is on the ground, and he just looks up, and you just see Godzilla on one side and Jet Jaguar on the other side, and it's like, oh man.
Mm-hmm. He is not having a good day.
No.
So that is when we get, as I said, the most perfect scene in cinematic history. If you've watched season 3 or through 6 of Mystery Science Theater 3000 or 3 through 5, you've seen this scene in the opening credits of Godzilla doing the flying tail kick. It's magnificent. It's just so bizarre and crazy,
Yep.
In Hedra a couple of years ago, we had Godzilla flying, where he tucked his tail between his legs and blew the atomic breath and flew like a jet engine.
Yeah, which is weird.
Yes. And as inane as that is, this is crazier, but also funnier. It's just so perfect. I first saw this movie, I was probably 6 when I saw this on VHS, and I'll talk about the VHS history of this movie. But I loved it ever since then, and I never get tired of it. And I'm 41 years old, and it brings a smile to my face. See Godzilla flying across his ground on his tail to do a missile drop kick.
Oh, dude, no, I was laughing. I actually laughed out loud when I watched it again, and again, he didn't do it once, he did it twice. Jet Jaguar literally is holding him, drop kicks Megalon, he motions again to do it again, and so they spliced in the replay, and he does it a second time. I'm like, as weird as that looks, I dig it. It seems it just seems appropriate at this point in the fight.
Gotta make sure we know what the score is here, bro.
Right. So he is the champ. You got to make sure you put him over.
The one that then the other one that I wanted to note is then Godzilla picks up Megalon and slams him over and over by his tail.
Yep.
We would see. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, Megalon doesn't really have a huge tail. Was it by the tail or was he by either way? He's slamming him over and over again.
Yeah. And that scene, of course, Hedra is slammed in much the same way. Anguirus will be slammed up and down that way by the disguised Mechagodzilla in the next film. Mm-hmm. So this appears several times in films where Nakano does the special effects. I get the idea that this was one they figured out how to do fairly easily with the wire work, and it looked good. So that's why they went to the well and did it several times over the span of just a few years. And it's welcome, again, because it's a crazy looking scene that you never saw Godzilla do in the 60s, really. Whereas here, throwing guys around and stuff like that, that's more like the superhuman Godzilla of the late 60s and the 70s. So I'm down with that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I really dig it. Again, I go back to, you really can make a lot of analogies to watching a wrestling match, and it's a lot of fun. And I don't know how else to spin it. It is just a ton of fun to watch the fight. And for anyone who's a fan of giant monsters, would just sit back and be like, you know what? Crack me open another beer. This is good times. This is good times right here.
Good times, great memories.
Absolutely.
So Megalon flees, drills back under the ground, and runs away, and come back and hopefully fight another day in a video game or comic book.
Yep.
And the Seatopians seal all the entrances and exits so that they are now back in their underground kingdom.
Now, about that, he says that over and over again. So seal all the entrances. And I'm sitting here going in my head, how many did you have? Because I only thought you had, I guess in theory, the one in Easter Island, and then the one theoretically that Megalon came out of. How many did you have, and what did you think was going to happen if you left them open? Because nobody knows you're doing this.
That's a good question. And we'll get, the answer, I'm sure, will be forthcoming very soon. Because we've only been waiting, 48 years. I'm sure that we'll get an answer at some point.
Oh, man. That'd be an interesting dig deep into the well if you pulled out Megalon and Gigan for a new Godzilla movie.
Oh, man. Well, that's the thing. I mean, we got Gigan in Final Wars.
We did.
We never got Megalon again. It's like Gigan is more popular than Megalon, but in Japan, I would argue that Megalon is pretty dang popular over here in the States just because how ubiquitous this movie was for a long time.
Yeah. I mean, it has the history, and like you mentioned, you're going to go into you understand the VHS history better than I do, but I mean, it got a lot more love than you would think here in the U.S. Heck, one time I recall, I swear we were at your apartment and we flipped on the TV and we caught the very tail end, and both of us were looking and going, is this Godzilla versus Megalon? Who the hell reproduced this in widescreen?
Yes. That was when Sci-Fi started showing the uncut one, and it was widescreen. It's like, what?
It looked good too. I'm like, man, if I could get a copy of that.
Yeah. So the both the enemy monsters have retreated. Another favorite scene of mine. Jet Jaguar and Godzilla shake hands, as the two baby faces would do, and Godzilla says, "Okay, I'm outie," and heads back off to go return to Monster Island. Jet Jaguar then shrinks back down, and he goes back and he's hanging out with Goro and Roku and Cool Bro, and we get the one line denouement. We'll have to tell this. We'll have to warn the scientists to be more careful.
You're right. They did have that line.
I just picture, Goro going to the phone. It's like, boop, 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 boop. Hello, scientists? This is Goro here. I think next time you need to be more careful. Thank you.
To be fair, he is an inventor. So
Yes.
if anyone would have the number 2, the scientists, it might be the inventor.
Yeah. Then we somebody get Washington on the horn right now, but
oh man.
but so then we get the closing song, Godzilla, Jet Jaguar, they punch, 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 which is it's a goofy one. It's right up there with the Godzilla march from the previous film.
Yeah.
But hey, it was they were making songs like this so they could sell records, and it's a novelty song. So that's fine. That doesn't bother me. It is kind of silly. Just they punch, punch, punch. Godzilla March was marginally less silly.
Yeah. But again, I continue to stand by the argument that this is a fun movie, so it's okay.
Yes. So that is the end of our story. I think I know this, but Joe, what do you say? If the listeners out there have somehow not watched Godzilla vs. Megalon, you think they should check it out?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm surprised. Even an enthusiast like myself, who's not super dedicated, has watched this movie multiple times. But if you haven't watched it, by all means, go watch it. And oddly enough, I do kind of recommend you watching this first before watching Godzilla vs. Gigan, because Godzilla vs. Gigan, in my opinion, is a far superior movie from a story standpoint.
Yes.
So you won't feel as cheated if you watched it in the chronological order.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the thing. So I agree. I mean, it's like you said, it's a lot of fun. I've loved this movie since I was a kid, as goofy and strange and unusual as it is, even for this series, which has some oddball stuff in it,
Yeah.
But it plays a lot more like a TV show than it does a Godzilla movie. But as if you're a fan of, not only a fan of Godzilla, but if you're a fan of like Ultraman, this is right up your alley. Jet Jaguar is a great addition as the robot hero. Even though, the joke that he looks kind of like Jack Nicholson in a turtleneck, dead on,
dead on. I was trying to figure out a way to work in the Jack Nicholson bit, but I couldn't think of a good one. So I'm glad you did it. I'm glad you.
Yeah. Two really cool villains in Megalon and Gigan. I mean, I'm a personal fan favorite of mine is Gigan, and Megalon I think deserves more play than he gets. Frankly, I think he's a well-defined monster. It's just a lot of fun. This is one especially also. If you've got kids or maybe nieces and nephews, that kind of situation, it'd eat this up, because this is definitely operates on kid movie logic in a lot of ways.
Yes, it's very concrete thinking. It's like this. Okay.
Yeah.
And they run with that. And so it kind of works out that way.
Yeah.
And you're right. It very much kid logic, but I could see, and I think that's why it's such a charm for those of us who kind of grew up in the time period of the 80s and got to see this movie. It kind of sticks in. Like for me, technically, I didn't see this movie until I was in college, and it still sticks with me because, from the video game, I was going to love the character one way or the other. So when I got to see the monster on the big screen, I'm like, this is pretty slick. I mean, the story's crap, but the monster fight is fantastic.
Exactly. If you're coming at from a video game side, that's okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it is kind of interesting, though. We mentioned that, I made the comment Godzilla versus Gigan's a far superior movie from a story standpoint. Looking at the story and looking at the antagonists in that movie, Megalon makes a lot more sense as a space monster.
Yes.
So it's kind of a shame he didn't get to have like a cameo first appearance in that movie. Alongside Gigan before having a separate one. And like you said, as a TV series, it kind of would have been interesting to see Godzilla versus Megalon as a TV miniseries. Like I could see this as like, I don't know, a 4 to 6 episode mini, and you'd have more time to flesh some things out, do like, a half hour show in like 6 episodes. It'd be kind of interesting to see how that would have played out.
Yeah, we would have learned a lot more about Seatopia, maybe their relation to Space Hunter Nebula M. Maybe explain how the heck Jet Jaguar can increase his mass.
I mean, this is science fiction, Luke. There's only so much we can explain. It's like we're suspending the disbelief that we can have giant robots as a result of nuclear weapons and nuclear testing. But how the hell does he gain his mass like that? How does that robot do that? I don't understand.
So if you so that's the thing. I mentioned the VHS history of this movie. So it was believed. It was never actually the case, but it was believed for a long time that the edited CinemaShares US version was believed to have fallen into the public domain. This resulted in numerous cheap VHS and early cheap DVD releases of this film out there in the edited US version form. This was not the case. The film was never in the public domain. Now, this belief was so widespread that even Toho believed the edited film, to be in the public domain and did not do anything as far as enforcing these releases.
Wait a minute.
I had a go ahead.
Don't they have a legal department? How the hell do they miss this?
I don't know. I've talked to other fans about this, and they're like, well, why were they doing this? It's like, it wasn't that, people in the US just assumed. Even Toho believed this was the case because the problem, I think, is that if you watch the CinemaShares version, I think they cut some of the copyright stuff off on the title. And so it's the most famous example of this, of course, is Night of the Living Dead, which is in the public domain because the titles don't have the copyright information on them properly. So it is now, that movie is in the public domain because there just never existed a copyrighted version just based on the titles.
Wow.
So that was what the belief was. So when I was a kid, I had a big box version of this from Star Maker Cinema that was called Godzilla vs. Gigan. It was a big white box. It was just wrong on so many levels. The cover actually had Godzilla fighting Mechagodzilla on it. You can imagine my disappointment, 6-year-old Luke being like, I want to see Mechagodzilla. And you get Megalon. It's like, well, that's not Mechagodzilla, is it? I mean, I still like the movie. I mean, I still went bananas for it. It had Gigan in it too, but that giant box I had for years. I don't know what happened to that giant box, but you can go and find all sorts of, they're harder to find now, but back in the heyday of VHS, it was very easy to find cheapy versions of this. In the 2000s, or the maybe 99, 2000, somewhere on there, Toho figured out, wait a minute, that's not actually the case. And they reestablished and reasserted their copyright over the film. So if you want to get this film, it was available on DVD and I think Blu-ray from, I think it was Tokyo Shock, I think was the name of the outfit, which was, I want to say it's Blue Underground's kaiju wing. And right now you can go on Amazon, you can get Godzilla vs. Megalon and Destroy All Monsters on a double feature on DVD for $25, which is pretty decent. But if you're, again, if you're a Showa Godzilla fan, your best bet is probably getting that Criterion box set. I don't think the film will ever look better here in the US than it does on that box set, that Criterion set. You can also get the Blu-ray of Godzilla vs. Megalon as well if you prefer just to get the single Blu-ray. So it's it is out there to get, and it's readily available. It's still in print, so if you're interested in it, you can pick it up. What you can't find, because believe me, we've looked, is the Mystery Science Theater 3000 Volume 10, which originally contained Godzilla vs. Megalon, because Best Brains, again, operating under the assumption, as everyone else had, that Megalon was in the public domain, thus they were free and clear to release it. Rhino released that DVD set and were promptly hit with a cease and desist and said, you don't have the rights to release this. They pulled it back and released volume 10.2, which replaced Godzilla vs. Megalon with another giant lizard movie. This one actually in the public domain, which is the giant Gila monster.
Wow.
Which is a funny movie in its own right and a great episode, but not Godzilla, This also noteworthy, then they, on the Gila monster disc, they did a little short where it actually brought back Joel Hodgson, Trace Below, and Frank Conniff. And they did a little scene where they were explaining that you were supposed to take the Godzilla vs. Megalon disc and throw it in the garbage and replace it with the the upgraded disc, which was a giant Gila monster. This was the first. I mean, it's classic. It's like, just take that disc, just throw it out, you know. But you had Joel as Joel, you had Trace as Dr. Forrester, and Frank as TV's Frank, and Trace is playing Crow, and then Frank is actually playing Tom Servo, which is the first and only time he played Tom Servo.
Oh, wow.
But it was great just to get this little bit of, you know, Joel and Dr. Forrester and TV's Frank era Misty host segment, just a little 5-minute clip talking about, you know, it's like, Frank, you got the wrong giant lizard movie. You were supposed to get the other giant lizard movie. It's like, I called Toho and they said, no, I don't speak Japanese. I don't know what that means.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So if you ever find out in the wild at a used bookstore or something, Mystery Science Theater 3000 Volume 10, buy it. Okay, just put it out there. Buy it and then send me an email, earthdestructiondirective@yahoo.com.
Just do it.
Yeah. In all seriousness, you know, I'll throw it out to you, the listeners. Do you have good memories of Godzilla versus Megalon? Did you see this as a kid? Do you remember that Misty episode? Misty episode is freaking hilarious. Also, I'd like to point out, it has my favorite host segment of all time, which is the Orville Redenbacher host segment.
Oh my God, that is such a great bit.
Yeah.
And it's one of the best bits ever.
What do you care? You can't afford it. You're flat busted. You're going to be eating a lot of cheese. Government cheese. I cannot tell a lie. The first time I saw that episode, I was probably 10 years old, in my room watching TV when I was supposed to be lights out after bed, almost peeing my pants. I was laughing so hard at the Orville Redenbacher sketch.
Oh, God.
But good times, great memories. But yeah, so you can send in your thoughts, earthdestructiondirective@yahoo.com. I'd love to hear from you. You can talk about them here in the show. We can also, of course, you can find us on Facebook. You can find me on Twitter. You can find us on YouTube. So all sorts of ways to get in touch. Joe, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a wonderful episode. Thank you so much. Is there anything you want to plug, or any place else we can find you, or anything else you want to talk about?
No, first off, thanks for having me, man. Be happy to do any other future ones. Again, if we wanted to do a horribly polarizing episode of Final Wars, I'll be more than happy to be a fanboy for that. I don't have anything specific to plug. I do have delusions of grandeur of starting up a channel, but if I ever do that, I'll be sure to share it with you so that I can plug it at that time. So yeah, I'm just grateful. Thanks for having me on, man. Maybe we can do another wrestling ep or another, giant monster flick ep at some point in the near future.
Hey, I would totally be down with that, Joe. Always welcome here on Earth Destruction Directive. And speaking of which, I would like to take a moment to thank all of you, yes, you, the listeners, for downloading the show and listening, and to remind everyone that Earth Destruction Directive is for everyone. All are welcome here at Earth Destruction Directive. If you consider yourself a fan of Japanese giant monsters in any capacity, if Daikaiju brings you joy, you are welcome to be a part of the show and interact with the show however you would like. So I appreciate everybody, and thank you again. So Joe, thank you once again for coming on. Hope everyone enjoyed this show. Come on back next time. I'm sure we got something good. Should I tell them what it is, or should we let them stew on it? What do you think?
Oh, let it stew, man.
Let it stew. Let it stew. You can't. It's like chili. If you start taking the lid off, it's not going to cook right, man. I'm just telling you. So we will. I know what the next episode is. It is something I think talk about polarizing. I'll just leave it at that, and we'll let everybody think noodle on that one for a while. Hope everybody enjoyed this episode. Please come back next time, and thank you again, Joe. And until then, keep 'em stomping. This has been Earth Destruction Directive, a Daikaiju podcast, produced and created by me, Luke Giaconetti, as part of the Two True Freaks Internet Radio Network, available at twotruefreaks.com. This is a fan work celebrating the history and culture of Japanese giant monsters. All movies, TV shows, comic books, characters, and other intellectual property is copyright their respective copyright holders, and no infringement is intended or implied. If you would like to send an email to the show, you can email me at earthdestructiondirective@yahoo.com. I try to respond to all emails, and if you send in some comments, I will read them on the show.
All episodes of Earth Destruction Directive can be found at twotruefreaks.com. You can also find the show on your favorite podcatcher. Just search for Earth Destruction Directive. You can even leave a review on your podcatcher of choice if you'd like. You can find me on Facebook. Just search for first name Luke, last name EDD. You can also get in touch with me on Twitter. Just search for the handle @LJacone. That's LJACONE. The theme song for this podcast is Future Gladiator by Kevin MacLeod, downloaded from Incompetech.com, licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 4.0 license. Thanks for listening, and be sure to come back next time for more city-stomping fun here on Earth Destruction Directive. Tune in next time to hear the crusty old podcaster from Oklahoma say,
There's a WTF moment if I ever saw one.